But continuing, espionage between nations, both friendly and less so, can probably be traced back to the time when the first group of cavemen realized they could use clubs as weapons. Again, referring to Arthur C. Clarke in 2001. All intelligence services will, as a matter of fact, gather information on whoever and whatever they can. This is what intelligence services do. The trick is to not get caught. Did Israel not spy on the United States, its staunchest ally, and without whom Israel would have a hard time sustaining itself? The most infamous of American spying for Israel is a former U.S. Navy civilian named Jonathan Pollard, who passed classified information to Israel. Pollard is now serving a life sentence for treason. While Pollard may have become the focal point of the U.S.-Israeli espionage dossier, other incidents have gone largely unnoticed. One report, aired by Fox News, states that, quote, according to a U.S. intelligence agency, the government of Israel conducts the most aggressive espionage operation against the U.S. of any U.S. ally. Indeed, since 2001 9/11 terror attacks on New York and Washington, more than 60 Israelis have been arrested or detained under the new Patriot Act for immigration violations. Among them were active-duty officers in the Israeli army. All theatrics of embarrassment by the U.S. Department of State aside, the release of such information accomplishes a dual purpose. Many countries in the Middle East are more concerned about Iran's nuclear program than they have publicly admitted. The information contained in one cable states that King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia has asked the United States a number of times to cut the head of the snake when talking about Iran and its nuclear program. Other Arab leaders from Jordan, Qatar, and the UAE had similar concerns. First, these cables demonstrate to Iran that its Arab neighbors are extremely concerned with the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. And second, it forces the Arab countries in question to perhaps take a more transparent stand vis-a-vis Iran. This information hardly places the security of the United States in jeopardy. As for the embarrassment that the State Department will have to deal with for insulting foreign leaders, once again, no great state secrets were revealed. And we get into, of course, Berlusconi likes to party, and Sarkozy's thin skin, and yada yada. The question here is who leaked the info, and what do they stand to gain from it? If the cables were leaked by the U.S. government, was it to prove that the U.S. is not the only one to adopt double standards when it comes to Middle East politics? The alternative would indeed be an embarrassment. Again, that's a piece from oilprice.com. And we'll run down just part one of what we have posted up under WikiLeaks being used to justify an Internet Patriot Act. And again, we'll just try and elucidate what that title means. And we can do it by extrapolating it to any other questions that we ask. Even if you believe the official story of 9/11, it still traces back to our creation of Al-Qaeda. And they say, we fight you because you invade our lands. Even if you believe in man-made global warming, what will paying carbon indulgences to the Rothschilds and others do? And even if you believe that WikiLeaks is what it's being portrayed as, a muckraking organization for the 21st century with its media darling front, it's going to be used to crack down on the web. So the one part I will quote out again that I read into the record on the most recent NewWorldNextWeek.com, we'll still have the internet, just like we can still fly. You'll just have to be on the approved list, screened, stamped, zapped, mugged, and molested if you want to get on the net. But let's go down our related WikiLeaks updates, part one. 21stCenturyWire.com has corrupted Oracle or COINTELPRO asset of the establishment. And then we have the aforereferenced oilprice.com article, State Secrets or Clever Tactics. But then some of the updates and the ups and downs and ins and outs of the WikiLeaks psyop from the Globe and Mail. WikiLeaks faces cyber attacks, lost PayPal account for donations. Operation Payback then crippled MasterCard.com in revenge for the WikiLeaks ban. More on that from Guardian, as well as threat level. The Daily Beast reporting on the supposed forthcoming Wall Street bombshells. DarkGovernment.com reporting on cables referring to UFOs expected. MSNBC also reporting WikiLeaks chief says expect UFO talk in future files. Something in the documents from the Telegraph. U.S. identifies key sites around the world for security. Europeans accused of paranoia over fears of U.S. economic espionage, documents reveal. That's from Tom Burkhardt on Anti-Fascist Calling. Interesting note out of Australia from tvnz.co.nz. Australia says U.S., not WikiLeaks founder, responsible for leaks. Alternet.org reporting on the 9 weirdest things about the WikiLeaks story. ChrisFloyd.com getting into the Dr. Assange Love arrest as a chilling sign of power's new realities. Threat Level again reporting on the quote-unquote chaos at WikiLeaks that followed Assange's arrest. And the last bit on part 1 is the question. Was Assange set up by a CIA operative? And we'll throw in our own question here. Does it take one to know one? WikiLeaks founder was arrested over, admittedly, spurious rape claims made by militant feminists who worked for a group funded by the U.S. government. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's arrest over the dubious rape and molestation claims of 2 Swedish women is likely a political stunt after it was revealed that one of the women has connections to the CIA and is a militant feminist who published a guide on how to get revenge on men and make them suffer.
Tim, first of all, these rape charges, what more do we know about them?
Well, quite a lot, some of which we can say and some of which we can't, and for viewers at home, this might be something of an adult conversation, if you follow my drift. This happened allegedly on August the 15th of this year in Sweden. Mr. Assange admits he had consensual sex with 2 women over the 15th and the 17th of August. 2 days after that, they both went to the police station and claimed 1 rape and 1 sexual molestation. He denies absolutely these charges. It is interesting as a bit of background. The first woman involved is a known radical feminist in Sweden, and she is known to have a theory that men dominate their social positions through sex. And she's also been known to write on the internet a blog called 7 Steps to Legal Revenge. Now, that's perhaps by the by. If it happened, it happened, and if it didn't, it didn't. But that is actually contextual for reasons I'll come on to in a moment about a British magistrate. A warrant was eventually put out. The police threw out the case, first of all, and eventually put out a warrant. Now, it's an EAW, a European Arrest Warrant. Now, that means that the British police, once they receive it, have a duty to interview the individual concerned and, crucially, to hand him over to a magistrate. It's not just a case of them just talking to him. Now, there may be some wiggle room, and maybe the Metropolitan Police might decide there is some wiggle room and they just want to talk to Mr. Assange. But the Home Office says that under the rules of the EAW, they're under a jurisdiction to hand him to a magistrate. Now, the reason I put all the preamble in about the background to the case is because just because he goes to a magistrate about whether he will be sent to Sweden, it doesn't mean the magistrate will automatically agree, and the magistrate might want to look at all the evidence that there is, including why the original case was thrown out, almost laughed out by the prosecutor, and he or she can make a decision on whether they agree there is enough evidence to send this man to Sweden, not to extradite him. It's going to be called an extradition, but legally it's not, and the Home Secretary does not have to sign off on it, which I think she's quite relieved
Tim,
about.
I just want to say it's very material to what we're discussing. We are just hearing breaking news that Julian Assange has been arrested and will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court later today. Julian Assange, we repeat, has been formally arrested and will make an appearance, as Tim was saying, he's suspected at Magistrates Court later on today. OK, we've got that established then, Tim. Now, what happens if he does end up back in Sweden?
Well, this is why I put all the preamble in. OK, yes, it is a moot point about whether he will be arraigned in front of a magistrate who agrees that there is enough evidence. Now, if there is enough evidence, and it's very important to remember, he has not been charged with anything. He's only wanted to be interviewed as a witness. So the magistrate might decide, well, I'm quite happy for the Swedish police to come over here and talk to him if they wish to, and his lawyers have said that's absolutely fine with them, but I'm not going to actually send him over there when he hasn't even been charged. These are simply allegations, and he wanted as a witness, not as necessarily a suspect yet. Okay, taking your question that if he was sent or surrendered, to use I think the legal term, to Sweden, at that point the Swedish police then interview him, and they make their own minds up whether there's enough evidence through their own CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, whether to go to trial or not. Then the legal course takes its course. He would or wouldn't be tried for whatever the charges were against him. But then we bring in the complication of the Americans. And it's important to remember that none of this at the moment is anything to do with WikiLeaks and what he's put out there, but the Americans want him for something different.
And that would be espionage. And we'll get to that in just a moment. So that was a clip from Sky News, and that ties in our first little bit of CIA connections into this case. So we'll dive into related WikiLeaks updates, part 2, with an interesting one from beforeitsnews.com. Fenton Dunn put together a little spread of photos with Julian Assange as Dr. Strangelove. And some of the photos, yes, they've been photoshopped, but sometimes just to be in the same photo. There's a striking similarity between Julian Assange and some of the characters played by the late, great Peter Sellers in the fantastic Dr. Strangelove. However, more importantly, but we, of course, have to make those notes. It is media, monarchy. We pay attention to the memes and the signs and the symbols. An article from ABC News dated December 8th. The arrest and detention of Julian Assange Tuesday on charges of rape and sexual assault was at the least a convenient development for government leaders who've sought ways to contain the leader of the controversial website. But in an exclusive interview with ABC News' Jim Sciutto, WikiLeaks spokesman Kristen Franson insisted